All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Stephen Golub, who's a political analyst and a lawyer, and he's joining us live on WION. Mr. Golub, thank you very much indeed for joining us here. Now, this, of course, is day 13 of the war. The Strait of Hormuz is shut. The price of petrol is hovering at $90 to $100 per barrel. The stock markets are looking jittery. In your assessment, how well do you think this war is going for Donald Trump?
Not well. Before continuing, though, I do want to express my heartfelt concern for all the innocent civilians in the Middle East, including many people from India who are living and working there. But to get back to your question, in some regards, yes, the U.S. has clobbered Iran, and Israel have clobbered Iran in terms of taking out 40 of their top leaders, decimating parts of their armed forces, especially the Revolutionary Guard, taking out missiles and drones to some extent. But Iran just keeps firing back, even at a somewhat diminished level from when the war first started. It still has drones doing damage to, for example, very important U.S. radar installations in the Gulf. So, and all Iran needs to do to win, in a sense, is to survive. All the Iranian regime needs to do is to survive. And make no mistake, it's a despicable regime. It's mass murdered thousands or tens of thousands of its own people. However, in terms of what the U.S. is doing and the very mixed goals the U.S. is articulating, which vary from day to day, it certainly does not seem to be achieving a quick victory by any means. And whether it's even achieving a gradual victory remains to be seen.
Right. Now, the question, of course, is what would it mean to be victory for the United States of America and the State of Israel, who've started this war? Because Donald Trump was pretty clear on day one. He wanted the people of Iran to rise up and take over their government once the Americans were done with their operations, which effectively meant that he wanted a regime change in Tehran. Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking a little while back, said that this was some kind of a new condition that the Israelis wanted in Tehran to happen. In your assessment, how realistic do you think is a regime change in Tehran?
Well, we could be surprised, but right now it doesn't seem to be that. Excellent points there. One, I'll push back on just briefly a little bit, is that yes, I completely agree. Donald Trump has been talking about regime change or unconditional surrender. And then the next day, his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, seems to be that he was a telegenic Fox News host, says this is not about regime change. So one of the many problems has been the mixed messages, mixed goals the U.S. has been articulating. In terms of Israeli and U.S. goals, you could yet see the U.S. declaring victory in a week or two or three by Trump saying, okay, we wiped out a lot of their missiles. We wiped out or limited their nuclear capacity again, even though supposedly we'd obliterated that, according to Trump last year, and pulling out. I'm not quite predicting that'll happen, but that's one possible scenario. One additional factor to keep in mind, though, is that the U.S. and Israeli goals aren't necessarily the same. Right. Israel is much more concerned with wiping out Iran's ballistic missile capacity, whereas in terms of protecting the Gulf, protecting shipping, protecting the U.S. allies in the Gulf, drones are at least as much, or even Israel is very, very concerned with wiping out Hezbollah in Lebanon. The U.S. shares that goal, but I wouldn't say it's the priority to the same degree. The U.S. has not gone to war specifically against Hezbollah, is not attacking it, and Israel is. So the priorities overlap, but they're not completely the same.
Interesting. Now, we'll talk a bit about the implications of what this war would mean for West Asia in a bit. But I want you to weigh in on what this war means for the American people at large. Now, all through his campaigning days, Donald Trump said that there would not be foreign forever wars under his presidency. But looking at how things are panning out, this is clearly a foreign war that is costing the American people $2 billion every single day. Do you think this is a betrayal by Donald Trump of his MAGA movement of Make America Great Again but focusing on American policies. Instead, what he's done is he's taken the United States into a full-scale war with a pretty formidable nation in the Middle East.
Yeah, although, he's saying it's not a war because if it were a war, we'd have the U.S. Congress declaring war, and he hasn't bothered to explain or try to justify or get an act of war declared by the U.S. Congress. But that's just a technicality. Well, it shouldn't be a technicality, but from his point of view, it is. In terms of what you were just describing, to some extent, yes, it's definitely betraying the promise he'd made to the American people, and especially to his MAGA base, that the U.S. was all about America first, which doesn't include launching massive foreign wars overseas. Now, a lot of that base is going along with him, but there are some people who are feeling betrayed, or at least questioning why Trump is acting, some within his base who are saying, why is Trump acting so much against his promises? More broadly, it's causing all sorts of problems for the U.S., and with more maybe yet to come in terms of prompting inflation in other parts of the world as well, putting U.S. lives at risk, and looking down the line to November, when we have our midterm elections where control of Congress could be determined. This is more fuel for the fire of the Democrats, who already were looking pretty good in their prospects to win back control of the House of Representatives and possibly the Senate come November. So ramifications on a number of levels, not least, as you pointed out, the parts of his base, not the majority, but parts of his base feeling betrayed.